information, I asked him again, did you kill your brother? And he said yes.
Did you kill your brother? I most certainly did not. Tonight's Spotlight asks, who killed Brian McDermott? The police won't say it, but they have only one suspect, a brother of the murdered boy, William McDermott, now living in Liverpool. Tonight, for the first time, you will hear in his own words what he has to say about the allegation that he was responsible for his brother's murder, which he says he's not only innocent of, but which is also rude to him. I've never been in full control of my life, and I think perhaps maybe that's primarily because I'm just waiting for that tap on the shoulder to say that here we now have evidence, or here we don't have evidence, or maybe perhaps now we found somebody responsible for it and you're a free man. I have gone from day to day like a vagabond. Belfast, 1973. The setting for the murder of Brian McDermott, a killing which to this day is mired in horror. A killing which continues to have awful repercussions for his family more than 3 decades on. Brian was 5 when his family moved to Belfast from Scotland in 1968. They settled in the Woodstock Road area, east of the city. Well Street, 2 up, 2 down, kitchen houses. Just normal children. You know, we did what kids normally do. Play around, football, play on the street, sort of thing. Having fun. Yes, very much so. Brian, known to his friends as Wee Jock, was the youngest of 5.
I don't remember him in the classroom. He would have sat on his own. Nobody ever would have bothered with him. He was very, very quiet, subdued wee fella. You always remember that at the ears, he had large ears. He was very quiet wee fella.
These photographs are the last taken of Brian, playing soldiers with his brother Eddie, the oldest of the boys, home on leave from the army. 24 hours of these pictures being taken, Brian was almost certainly dead. When I come home, he was all over us. It's not the sort of thing you'd see in brothers, but we'd cuddle each other, sit in place, sit on the chair together, do things together. The third brother, 16-year-old Billy, features in these pictures too. Brian's little hand can be seen, perhaps protecting Eddie, the favourite of his 2 brothers. We would have this sibling rivalry thing, you know, where he was the little doted boy, he was mummy's little boy. He would get everything, and you know, it's the way things are in many families. We would fight, we would argue, we would poke each other. In fact, I have a scar on my wrist where Brian threw a bottle at me and cut my wrist open. Sunday lunchtime, the last day of Brian's summer holidays, he headed off to the Ormeau Park nearby. When he didn't return for his dinner, his mother began to worry. Sent me and a friend out, and this was the first place we came to look. Brian would always come here. There was no sign of him. This wasn't Brian. Brian didn't just do that. He would come out, play on the swings, and then go home again. The police were called in that night. House-to-house inquiries began the next day. Brian's mother, Joan, seen here in her doorway, shrinking from the intrusion of the camera, could only wait and hope.
Apparently I was one of the last ones to see him alive. And if I had called him, you know, it might never have happened. I do always wonder.
As the days passed and the search was extended, the media was drawn in. But there was no thought that Brian had been murdered. We didn't even anticipate that Brian was dead. We were looking for a little boy who should have been home. We did not anticipate what happened over the next few days. The search for Brian ended the following Saturday. He'd been missing 6 days. A Hessian cloth sack was spotted in the River Lagan opposite the boat club, examination of the remains was only possible because a child's right arm was found in a brown paper bag, which had been put separately into the sack.
It was quite badly burned, but there was still some skin remaining on the fingertips, and therefore it seemed possible, but by no means certain, that fingerprints could be obtained from that hand as a lead to the identity of the deceased person.
There was a knock on the door this Saturday evening. The police, they wanted some of Brian's homework or any toys or paperwork.
This is the very homework notebook the police took away. Evidence of the fingerprint analysis can still be seen between the tentative work of a 10-year-old child. When the fingerprints were found and tested, they matched those found on the hand retrieved from the river.
I recall a policewoman and a police officer walking past the window, and my mother just screamed, because I think she knew at that point that if they're sending a policewoman, she's coming to bring bad news. Next thing I hear, Mum screaming, shouting. But no, can't be. But it was.
The brutal nature of this killing stunned the city and beyond. Both Catholics and Protestants came to the funeral at Mount Pottinger Presbyterian Church. The Police Federation said members would work on the case without pay. The IRA made clear they had no involvement, while the UDA posted a reward of £500. With the sectarian motive ruled out, speculation raised about exactly how and why Brian had been so savagely murdered.
There has been talk of witchcraft. Do you know anything of this?
Yes, I've heard these speculations, but I think it's too early in the day for people to condone that it was as a result of witchcraft.
The mood would be best described to some extent as a kind of a folk hysteria type. So that even, for example, the local parents went to Winnifield police station asking for an escort for their children to and from school every day.
I just had visions of Brian lying on his slab with somebody burning him, cutting him up, some sort of sacrifice. If somebody's killed him, why don't they just kill him? Why did they burn him and cut him up?
This scrapbook, kept by Brian's mother, charts the diverse and sometimes near bizarre lines of inquiry the police followed. It also contains reminders of her lost boy, his school badge, the last card he sent to his mom. The BBC interviewed a psychiatrist in the aftermath, trying to make sense of the killing.
What would stop the ordinary person committing an act like this would be that he would feel sorry and pity for his victim. But an individual like this would have no feeling, and in fact might almost get some pleasure or very excitement or thrill out of this type of murder.
Dr. Lyons, still a practicing psychiatrist, has had many years to reflect on Brian's death.
It's interesting to speculate what the motive would be to kill a 10-year-old. It may have been a fight that went wrong, a jealousy, something of that nature. May have been a paedophile. But because the body was so badly mutilated, it's impossible to know, I think, if he was sexually abused.
Pedophilia remained the most popular hypothesis. The toilets in the Ormeau Park were locked up, while the police prosecuted several men on indecency charges. None had anything to do with the killing. In the end, the most enduring theory related to a paedophile ring from the 1970s, based around the Kincora Boys' Home in East Belfast. Convicted paedophile Billy McGrath and his associate loyalist John McCaig.
There previously had been, if you like, talk in journalistic circles about McCaig and about his proclivity in terms of teenage boys and so on. It was no secret that he was homosexual. It also emerged in the 70s. Claims have been made about William McGrath by other loyalists about his homosexual activities. So gradually, as the McDermott murder remained unsolved, various theories were put forward. I do know that Mrs. McDermott, the boy's mother, as the inquiry developed, she made claims about Kincora.
Today, the police say that they have dismissed all the myriad theories that flourished in the public imagination in the 1970s.
Professional judgment that we came to was that we had done enough investigations and we had looked at the origins of the genesis of each of those lines of inquiry, and
something that as youngsters you don't really understand, and clearly in today's life we see that that is a normal procedure for the police to start any investigation within a family community.
What had first terrified and then perplexed the public left the McDermott family divided and broken. They moved to the outskirts of the city, but the trauma travelled with them.
I think a lot of us turned to alcohol. Mum and Dad certainly did. And it was very difficult to live with. You know, we'd lost a brother and a son. We'd had no counselling. Those days, there was no counselling available. We just had to get on with our life as best we could.
Billy journeyed to England soon afterwards, joining the army, hoping to prove himself to his family.
I didn't particularly fit in, and I felt that had I, once I'd left the household, been through the army, things might be different. I might be looked upon as now having served a bit of time, and in my dad's eyes, from a military point of view, I might be held in a slightly better esteem.
But as Billy tells it, that's not how it worked out. Serving in the same unit as Eddie, he says he was locked into his traditional role.
Certainly my older brother would be very much more dominant towards me because he's the big I am. He's a great deal more respected than I am, and as far as he's concerned, I'm nobody nothing. And that indeed was the way things went when we were both in the army, because we were both in the same regiment and indeed the same company.
Did you feel like that in the household?
I did at times because it was I couldn't achieve what he had achieved, and because of that, it was like I was always downtrodden. And Eddie had been in the army before me, so therefore he was slightly more respectable than I was. He had gained that respect. I was just Eddie's little brother.
Billy's army career was short-lived. He was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for harming his 3-year-old nephew while babysitting. He was absent without leave at the time of the offence in 1976.
Billy basically assaulted the child. He burned his hands on either immersion heater or a hot water tank, something like that. The police were called and Billy was arrested.
I was left in charge of a minor. I had no experience. I was a young lad. I was like 18, 19 years old. The child was crying. I couldn't stop the child from crying, and so therefore I hit the child. I don't think I did anything different than anybody else might have done. It is something that I do deeply regret. I can't change it, and I'm very sorry for what I've done.
Social services said the child had suffered burns to a hand and extensive bruising in 2 separate assaults. These were Schedule 1 offences, the most serious category of crimes against children, and follow Billy to this day. They cannot be expunged from his criminal record. But less than a year later, Billy was in trouble again after an extraordinary confrontation with his own mother.
She would be constantly drinking, and then this would be a bottle of vodka a day, maybe sometimes 2 bottles of vodka. And in a drunken rage, she attacked me. And in my defence, I defended myself, and in just I punched her. She believed at the time that if I would hit her, I might also have dealt with my brother's death. So as a result of that, of course, the police decided it was worth interviewing me.
What happened?
Detectives arrived at my place of work, took me in the car, and I do recall that they said, you know what this is all about, don't you, William? For over the next 4 days, their treatment towards me was absolutely abysmal. It was the good cop, bad cop. Yes, you can have a drink of water, and the next minute they'd knock it flying out of my hand. No, you're not going to have anything. I'd be stood up against a wall, and this would go on for 4 days and 4 nights, where eventually they would say, look, we know you've killed Brian. We have the evidence. We know you're responsible, but because it's such a heinous event, you've locked it away in your mind. We're here now to help you retrieve that, and there is no way out of this. You are responsible. And over the course of the 4 days, I eventually crumbled. I had no representation. There was no tape recording. There were no cameras visible. And in due course, I gave them a statement.
Billy had become the prime suspect, but no charges followed and he was released. The police who dispute mistreatment won't comment on why no action was taken, but the confession remained on file and would rebound with a vengeance many years later. He got quite a few convictions over the years.
There are a few convictions.
17 convictions.
And I've mentioned many people in the past that such a bad crime? Is it a question of somebody standing up for themselves?
In 1982, Billy was again spoken to by the police about the killing when they were investigating a possible connection to the Concora Boys Home scandal. Nothing came of that inquiry. But 22 years later, Billy was back talking to the police. This time they wanted to know about an alleged confession he had made to his second wife. Billy was the #1 suspect again. Sarah McLeod was a single mom with 3 children when they met in 1996. She recalls the first time he visited her home.
He sat on the sofa and produced out of his motorbike leathers brown envelope. Inside the envelope were huge amounts of cuttings about his brother's murder. It probably took about an hour to actually read all of them. There were so many of them. And as I was sat reading them, he was sat by the side of me crying.
Billy moved in a short time later. Sarah says it was a happy household until her boys grew older, but then ran foul of their stepfather's temper, culminating in an attack on Will, her eldest, seen here on the left.
I had to be working on a night shift. Will had turned up in a police van where I worked with blood all over his face and had said to me that Bill had beaten him up. I went home, obviously with the police. Bill sat in the house and said, "It's a load of rubbish, it's a load of rubbish, whatever he said, he's got a nosebleed." And the police had decided there and then that he was not telling the truth, and they arrested him and he was charged.
Billy was convicted of the assault, but Sarah remained in thrall, and they married in 2002. The wedding didn't copper fasten the relationship. The 30th anniversary of Brian's death was around the corner, and with it a whole new set of pressures. The police turned to Crime Watch for help as they reopened their investigation 3 decades on. They, like the McDermott family, were hoping that it would lead to a breakthrough, but it seems the new interest in the case weighed heavily on Billy.
Is to bring the people responsible to justice.
I certainly was very jittery. And I think the reason, I was quite happy that the police were reinvestigating the situation. However, it transpired that what appeared to be happening was that the police were interviewing everybody within the family except for myself. And certainly because of this, I was very much sort of nervous because of the previous interviews, and because of comments that had been made by the police in 1976. My fears were maybe they have found something, maybe I am the person they're looking for, and yes, I was extremely scared.
The next development in the murder inquiry only became public as a result of the breakup of the McDermott's marriage and Billy's anger at the terms of the divorce settlement. He began threatening Sarah.
The first one says, "Until death us do part." Now there's the same for you. I wonder who will die first. Watch and wait.
Watch and wait.
Watch and wait with a question mark. The second one says, "I'm not finished with you yet. Just make sure you look over your shoulder for the rest of your life, because one day." That's it. What can you say?
2 months ago, a court decided the messages constituted harassment. William Billy McDermott was sentenced to 4 months in jail.
To be quite frank, I was extremely bitter about the fact that my ex-wife and I had split up and that I'd lost everything in my divorce. I was an exceptionally angry person at what she'd done, and I feel justified in being angry. But society doesn't allow us to be that angry. We have to control it. We have to go a different avenue. We're not allowed to express that kind of anger. And I did. I was punished for it.
These court proceedings would assume a significance that no one could have anticipated. The court was told that in 2004, Billy McDermott had told Sarah that he had killed his own brother.
He had phoned me up in another desperate suicidal state of mind, very unhappy about the way things were going as far as the investigation was concerned. And I just broached the subject, quite matter of factly, "Did you kill your brother?" And initially he said no. Several more minutes into the conversation, I asked him again,
police already had that one confession on file dating back to the 1970s. Now, additionally, they had this new alleged confession. A decision was taken to arrest Billy and question him all over again.
2004, a reinvestigation, I suppose, culminated with the arrest of one individual. He was interviewed over a number of days at the Serious Crime Suite. As a result of that, he was released for report to the Director of Public Prosecutions at that time. A full file was submitted, and the DPP directed that there was insufficient evidence to support a prosecution at that stage.
The bottom line is that the authorities didn't believe they could prove that William McDermott was the murderer. Today, investigators are left still looking for definitive answers to the same questions that they must have started with. Who, where, when, and how? The facts. There have been potential advances in the recent investigation, like one discovery in the lagoon that may or may not be of evidential value.
There was a knife, for example, recovered that we have some indication might have been linked to Brian's death and disposal of the body, dismemberment of the body, and so on. Given some other features that we were able to identify through appropriate experts, it may well have had a connection. So what I'm saying is that it's another little piece in the jigsaw.
During the 2003 interviews, the police brought forward what I considered to be the murder weapon. It was a bread knife. Now, I'm not an expert. I've watched a number of crime programs, and I'm led to understand that certainly blood turns to rust at some point, and yet there was no significant rust find other than deterioration after being in water for such a long time. I don't believe it was the murder weapon.
We do know that Brian was last seen alive in the Ormo Park, but there is no proof that's where he was killed.
I simply don't know where he was, where his life was taken from him. So it is possible, for example, that he came by his death in the Ormo Park, and then the Hessian sack that he was found in was used to move Brian from the Ormo Park across to the River Lagan where the body was disposed of.
The autopsy wasn't able to determine the cause of death, or even when Brian was killed, but examination of the crude dismemberment left room for informed speculation.
I think one might say that initially perhaps a certain element of panic, then perhaps a deliberate attempt to dismember using a tool of some sort, perhaps a tool that wasn't terribly effective. Then there may have been a pause whilst the person went away to look for a better tool, and perhaps not working on that well either, and finally an element of panic in which the main aim was to get rid of the remains as quickly as possible.
In 1973, the police searched the Ormo Park and other open land, including the Lagan riverbanks, looking for signs of the fire used to burn Brian's body.
It was my view that a domestic fire, a domestic grate, could not have caused the degree of burning that we saw in this body, and I would therefore have expected it to be on a bonfire, perhaps a fairly fiercely burning bonfire at that, to cause the destruction we saw.
The police never found the site of the fire. Another break for the killer, or is it killers? That the cleanup was so successful might suggest that the police should be searching for more than one murderer. 34 years ago, psychiatrist Alec Lyons thought it was unlikely that the killing was carried out by a single individual. Any change to revise your opinions at all?
Well, in 73, I came out strongly in the idea that it was possibly a group activity, because the standards of a group are much lower.
Being together in a group.
Lowers the standard, yes, does indeed, and that may have been the case here.
It's something that we have considered, and if there weren't two or three involved in actually taking his life from him in the murder, then it is quite possible that there was certainly more than one person involved in the disposal of his body.
However, the focus of the police investigation remains on Billy McDermott, in part because they know he had a row with Brian after the 10-year-old pulled a string tight around Billy's neck, apparently mimicking scenes from this horror film, The Pit and the Pendulum, which was broadcast on BBC One that fatal weekend.
I think the police's theory is that because we'd had this argument, and because he put this string around my neck, that indeed that was enough for me to do this evil deed.
What did the police say to you they believed
happened that day?
They believe that Brian and I were in the park playing and that he may have died as a result of an accident. I became scared. I panicked. I hid his body. I went back later in the evening, dismembered it, put it in a sack, walked the couple of 3 miles along the Amadale embankment where I sat on a towpath where I'm now alleged to have lit a fire and basically barbecued my brother. My argument is very simply that I don't believe anybody could dismember a body, carry it 2 or 3 miles up the road, incinerate it to the degree that it was dealt with, and throw it in the river, and get back home some 3 miles further down the road without any sign upon the clothing or the hands of any of this. And surely, if we're talking about butchering any carcass, there is going to be evidence of blood, there is going to be skin tissue, there is certainly going to be a smell about the body when you're seeing incinerating this particular carcass, be it an animal carcass or be it a human carcass. There will certainly be a smell. Nobody at any stage pinpointed the fact that I was covered in black smoke or I was covered in flesh or I was covered in blood. So I find that the idea of this is quite preposterous.
Did you kill your brother?
No, I did not. I would imagine that had I done this, that I would have sleepless nights. You know, I would be bereft with guilt. I would have flashbacks. You know, this certainly doesn't happen in my life. And even though the police have accused me of this crime, I have gone through it in my own mind many, many, many times over the last 35 years. There isn't a day goes by that this doesn't cross my mind. And certainly in the last 7 or 8 years, it has been literally bombarding me. Nothing has flashed back in my memory as to whether I've been responsible or not. The only problem I have is the fact that the police have constantly and persistently accused me. And their words from the 1976 interview stick very clearly in my mind. You did it. We know you did it. We have the evidence that you did it. We just want you to tell us why and how. And the fact that it's such a heinous crime, you've locked it away in your mind. And psychologically, we want you to bring that back out again.
Is it possible that you did, in fact, lock it away?
If we think in terms of World War I veterans who witnessed exceptional atrocities, in many cases, of course, they will have locked things away in their mind. So we know that the human mind is possible and capable of doing this. I don't believe there is any such thing locked in my mind. There is confusion in my mind. There is distress. There is hurt. There is pain. I have sought medical intervention of my own volition, speaking to psychiatrists. I have even considered the option of hypnotherapy in order to regress back to when I was a child, to when this incident may have taken place, as to whether they can coerce this information out of my mind. And it's just never going to happen. There is nothing in my head that is going to come out.
Is there a part of you almost that's afraid that it's possible that you could have done?
I would be terrified of certainly thinking that there would be a part of me that may have committed this offence. And certainly it is not something that I would be able to live with. I'm almost at the point where I wish the police had kept me in custody in 2003 and allowed it to go to court so that I would be judged and either proven guilty or proven innocent.
The police say they will not comment on the involvement of any individual in relation to this murder investigation. But Billy McDermott says he will remain their only suspect unless someone else confesses to his brother's killing.
I would say release me from my help. Even if you don't come forward in person, at least come forward and say that I'm not responsible. At least put me out of my misery. I've lived with this for 35 years, and I don't think it's fair. I am adamant that the police were wrong in their treatment of me. I'm powerless to do anything about it. But there is somebody out there in the world that knows something about my brother's death.
I've already been 9 for 34. Yeah. Never forget mine. No. One day, somebody will find out. Did this to you. A generation has passed since Brian McDermott's murder, but this killing has stayed in the public mind. And the question remains unanswered. Who did it? Was the killer some kind of faceless monster? Or is the explanation rather